Life's too short to drive boring cars.
I bet you last time you went into the car dealer to sign the paperwork on your new car, you probably felt a little intimidated. Maybe once you left, you felt like you were getting greased because you thought you lost some details in the transaction. Well, chances are you're not alone, because I too personally have experienced that. I've purchased many cars over the years, and I know I've made some mistakes. Now, looking back in hindsight, there's the best practices, and I know I didn't adhere to all of it. So I want to share some of the experiences I had where I messed up in my own personal transactions, and I want to share those with you so hopefully you don't get caught up in the same traps. Let's get into it now. So the first situation that I got screwed on was a single transaction strategy. Now that's something that a lot of people like to incorporate into their buying. I know it personally happened to me. When I traded in my Mercedes ML500 several years ago, I stepped into the dealership. I found they had a slightly used BMW X5 E7035D, and that's currently the one that I'm driving today. When I went to go in to make that transaction, I wanted to be as clean as possible. I wanted to be simple so it registered in my mind. But in doing so, I actually dropped my odds of maximizing the value. In other words, I gave all that upper hands to the dealer. And I know now, in retrospect, I screwed myself up. But what that is don't think of it in one transaction. You know, here's a transaction and here's the differential in price between the trade-in and the car that you're buying, and then possibly whatever the rate that they give you for financing or leasing, and just they just ball it up in one package and give it to you, and you're like, oh yeah, that looks great, there's a number, I'll go with that. No, I made that mistake. I literally even went in there myself, and because that was many years ago when I certainly didn't quite have the experience, I went in there and said, hey, I've got this Mercedes, yeah, I've got a trade, and I told them right away, that's another mistake by the way, but I told them I had this trade, here was the price for the X5, here's the price for my Mercedes, and in my mind I'm like, okay, here's the retail for theirs, here's where I think is fair for mine, there's the differential, how much do you guys have for financing rates? And I sort of asked all those questions, they came back, scribbled some notes, here's the offer. After a couple once and twice back and forth, we settled on a deal. That's the biggest rookie mistake of this century. Number one, first of all, never admit how you're paying up front. You want to make sure that they're thinking you may actually take the in-house financing. That's where most of the money comes from, is locking you into a long-term finance rate. But that's one part of the three ways. There's actually three separate transactions in what we consider a single transaction. One is that financing rate, which you can actually possibly negotiate in at its own terms, and you got to do that based on your own credit ratings and so on. So that's something you want to incorporate, but that's separate. Then the other hand is you negotiate the transaction cost of the vehicle you're buying. That's the first thing you want to do. You don't want to even tell them about a trade-in, because as soon as you tell them trade-in first, essentially they start balancing the prices and you wind up paying more than you should. So don't even talk about a trade-in. Don't talk about outhouse third-party financing. Talk about how much for that vehicle. Negotiate on the price of that vehicle. Then when you get closer to the end, then you start talking about, oh, by the way, I do have a trade-in now, and here's what I actually think it's worth. And to be fair, I believe this is where I feel like I get the fair deal and it's fair for both of us. Then you put down your number. Then you'll actually find you'll probably scale yourself a slightly better deal. Financing, also that's going to come in at the back end. That's something you're typically going to negotiate later on in the transaction as they sent you back to the finance office. And usually those are the brains behind the operations. It's usually the sales guys, more or less just the puppets, because essentially the decisions are going on by the finance people and by the general manager. The person on the front that you're dealing with face to face is usually more the person go to and from and facilitate the transaction, facilitate the test drive and all of that. So 3 separate transactions. It's critical. Now there's a second tip, and I really believe it's more applicable to today's market, because this isn't something that was more of an issue 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but now it actually is. And it's the old dealer holding mentality. Dealer holds the price. So you'll walk in there and there's a list price for this used car, and you're walking in and maybe it's a 2019 model year and you're looking at it and they're asking $39,900, and you're like, well, you know what? I'm thinking to myself, that vehicle's really only worth $35,000. And realistically, what you're thinking is probably pretty close to accurate. But what's going on in today's market now is dealers have the upper hand and they're taking it to the consumer, left, right, and center, bent over like it's going out of style. And the problem with that is now what's going on is you'll say, hey, I want to negotiate on that. And you know what the dealers are often giving you? And it's a heap of junk is what it is. They're telling you that there's actually a customer coming in tomorrow morning to take a look at it, and they sound very serious. So the dealer has a way of pressing the urgency, instilling that urgency in you, making you feel like that state of panic. That's going on right now. This market is insanity. So you get that feeling like you have to bid and you have to pay. And they really work you, making you believe that that urgency is just on your shoulder. It's right back there. But the problem with that is when you come and try to counter, you say, oh, really? Okay. Well, do you guys take any offers, or are you negotiable on your price? Well, of course, their absolute answer is, well, sorry, sir. No, this car, if you don't take it, it'll literally be gone by tomorrow morning. So that's the biggest load of crap. And while there is some truth to that, in some cases, cars are selling that quickly and that hot. It's not always the case. And quite honestly, if you truly believe a fair price is worth negotiating, definitely throw a negotiation down there. Be serious. Make sure you have the money in your pocket. But at the end of the day, don't take no for an answer. Because realistically, that actually just happened to me. I was going to place an order on a brand new Toyota Camry for my daughter. And sadly enough, I said, what kind of price do you have? Are you negotiable? The quick response was, no negotiations. The price is what the price is. So that happened to me once recently as well. Several months ago, I placed an offer for myself and I was willing to negotiate a little bit. I really believed what I was going to offer was more than fair, and I came at them with the same mentality about making an offer. Well, they quickly countered and said, well, sorry, sir. I mean, here is the asking price. If you're willing to put a deposit on the asking price, we can proceed. If not, just warning you that there's people waiting, and I've got another young couple coming to see that car later this evening. Well, so another phenomenon that exists, and I'm sure most of you have heard this, is bait and switch. Now, I've also been baited in my past too. Many years ago, I was looking at a little Mazda B2000 pickup truck. There was a local Mazda dealer. They were selling them brand new, rear-wheel drive, 5-speed manual gearbox, whatever that was. And I thought, hey, I just want a basic bare bones transportation. They had one listed in the local classifieds. Super cheap. It was about $9,995. Boom. I called them. They said, yes. We have that truck. I'm actually looking at it. It's sitting out front of the shop right now. And then basically I said, okay, hold on. I'm coming down. I'll be there in an hour. So I jumped in my car, buzzed down to the south side of Edmonton, checked into that Mazda dealer, and walked into the front showroom doors and ready to throw the money down. I literally had cash. I wanted to buy that truck for $9,995 plus fees, of course. I then asked for the salesperson who I spoke to on the phone with, and then he said, you know what? Sorry, sir. Shucks. That truck actually just sold. And this happened to me, and I felt so greased, like Vaseline. That's kind of what I felt like. I just wasn't right. So what I ended up doing was I look around, I felt frustrated, I felt a little bewildered, and I felt victimized. And then the salesman said, well, no worries, sir. We actually have a better model over here. It's really not much more money. You can actually get the extended cab version here. Everything else the same for another $2,500. And I have one right there if you care to take a look at it. I almost got screwed on the bait and switch, but at that point I knew I was greased. And if there's one thing I can take away and share with you, if you're getting rooked on that bait and switch, be sure to hold your guns. Don't get sucked into that. If they play that little trick on you, know what you want, stick to that, and find the next dealer who's willing to sell that car at that price. So the next tip that I actually got screwed on even recently, if you can believe it. Part of it was because there was an emotional attachment. My wife wanted the car. We walked into the dealer, and we started packaging it up. Now the worst part is, what ended up happening is I got suckered by what is called packed payments. You got to go in there, you have a perception of what you want, what you think the deal is worth on that car, trade-in value, you're financing your lease, have all that figured out, work that in, negotiate it all. But we ended up getting scammed by this phenomenon. And what really is that? Well, it's all these other little garbage add-ons that the dealers start injecting in there. Hey, do you want a little of this? You want a little of that? For example, like extra service contracts, extended warranties like CPOs, extra glass coverage or tire and rim protection packages or dent removal packages, 3M film or tint, paint and fabric protection or car starters. There's a pile of different things that these dealers are going to try to jam in there. And unfortunately, even I have to admit, I even recently got sucked in to the vortex that is packed payments. So not only do you have to watch out and not agree to some of these items, you better be sure that you're checking all the line items on your contract, that you're not paying for something you didn't agree to, because that sometimes actually does happen as well. Now, another one I have to share with you folks is one that I've personally been sucked into. Way back when I bought my Jeep TJ many years ago, I actually got pulled into the vortex of answering the question that they ask of me about what does my budget monthly payment schedule look like. In other words, they start probing you to see how much you can afford on a monthly basis. Say they start asking you, how much can you afford? $400 a month, $600 a month, $900 a month, whatever that is, they try to pull that out of you. The reality is all they're doing is fattening up their pockets, because what ends up happening is they, instead of you paying on a 5-year time frame and you say you want a $500 payment, they can extend that out and give you a $500 payment, but make it out for 7 years instead of 5 years, and you end up paying mountains more interest than you ever planned on. Now you might be thinking, oh, that fits my monthly budget, we're all good. But if you look at it at the end of the year, that's a couple more years of depreciation. That vehicle is underwater now on the overall loss of the value, but you've also paid on the other side of extra interest charges to the dealer, and you are taking it. I literally got sucked into that, but I was a young buyer at the time many years ago when I bought the Jeep. And unfortunately, we all learn the hard way sometimes. There's also some other little tricks that they can shiv in there when you're fixing a standard style budget. And they can actually say, for example, say you're borrowing $28,000 on this vehicle. What they can do is show you a 60-month payment for about $581.10 at an interest rate of 6.99%. Sounds reasonable, right? But if you actually do the math and you figure it out, do the reverse calculations, you'll find $28,000 financed for 60 months at 6.99% is actually only $554, which is almost $30 a month more. And what ends up happening, they're actually in the background bumping up the interest rates 2 points up to about 8.99%. And without even questioning the math, sometimes you get pulled right into that vortex. Man, I've been screwed so many times at the dealers. But trust me, I've learned my lessons, and I hope you do too. And with all of that said, be sure to click right there. You're going to love it. 5 of the top most reliable luxury cars. They will literally last forever. You're going to want to check that video out. It's a great one. You're going to learn a few things. I hope to see each and every one of you on that next video. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.